So good afternoon and welcome once again to Super League Raw. We thought we'd jump straight on this after, of course, a 40-minute debate last night on all things 14 teams Super League. A quick disclaimer, Stef hasn't had the time, he's a very busy man, to watch Derek's interview. I know he'll do that later, but he trusts me that much that he knows I will not give him a bum steer. So I'm going to talk Stef through some of the main talking points from Derek's interview. And first things first, love or hate Derek Beaumont. Many congratulations to Derek for coming out today, doing an hour and a half interview right from the horse's mouth. He's been front and centre in these discussions, and he felt it right and appropriate to come out to his Leigh supporters, speaking very much to his Leigh supporters, to just calm any nerves, to set the record straight. It's a really compelling interview. We have shared the link on our social media channels. So once you've finished listening to our debate with regards to what was said today, then maybe go and listen to Derek verbatim. It really is a brilliant interview that the Leigh Leopards have put out today. I think it's only right and I think it's only appropriate. One of the first things that Derek does in the interview today is show his disgust in the leak. It was Derek's in understanding that the discussions and the votes especially were going to remain private. And of course, that wasn't the case. Derek very disappointed in that as to how that was allowed to happen. He says that very openly. And on behalf of Super League Raw, you know, it's very rare that we get caught out, but actually when I look back on our show last night, it was out in the public domain. We had a big chat about it, but maybe we got caught up in a little bit of fantasy as well. And, you know, we do pride ourselves here on getting things verbatim. And today, Derek has given us it verbatim. So this is going to be a very factual chat from somebody who has been on the inside. If we can take a look at ourselves and maybe get better next time and not fall into that trap, because we did this time, I think, a little bit of a constructive criticism as well from our point of view to the Rugby Football League. When you're doing something like this, you know, we all agree that we don't want the press to get sound bites, put it out as clickbait. So one of the things that Derek discusses straight away, and we probably won't discuss this in too much detail, but I'll just throw it out there. In his interview, he mentions there's a £500,000 cost to increase fixtures in terms of covering it by Sky. And he's pretty confident that Sky will do that. But then, you know, you see on social media the clickbait starting where certain members of the press have said that Sky want answers for the £500,000 cost that they will have to incur due to the Super League decision to go to 14 teams. That is a spin on what Derek said. Complete spin. That is, and you know, I'm not being funny. Go and watch the interview after this. It's 130 minutes of rugby league passion, of progressive passion for our game. And we've got reporters doing that. Just not good enough. So a little bit of constructive criticism of the Rugby Football League, for Super League, for the owners and for everybody who's involved in this. When you're having these meetings, so we can get rid of all of this, you know, leaks and all the rest of it, call a press conference for 3 PM, straight out the room, you know, where Nigel Wood can come out, maybe a couple of the CEOs, maybe a couple of the owners, to sit there, tell the press in one go, this is what's been discussed, this is where we're going, and then a Q&A. And it cuts out all the drivel, all what we get, and we get it verbatim, a cleaner way of doing business. That's what we stand for. We'd love you to do that. So whenever you're having these meetings, you know, if the press if I've got to sit around for an hour because the meeting goes over, no drama. I'll sit in a press room for an hour to wait you to come out. Not a problem at all. But I'd rather get it verbatim. I really, really would. Bazza Kingston, thanks for your donation for today's show. Always a pleasure. He's done a super chat. If you want to do a super chat like Bazza's done, then do. Peter Barley's gone in as well. Look at that. Peter Barley's gone in as well. Hey, £1.99 he's giving us for today's content. Good lad, Pete. Good to have you company. Hello to Christopher Walsworth on Facebook. Carla Collins with us. Greg Roach is with us. Bazza Kingston, etc. Right. Well, Steph is on limited time. So let's get into it. Right. First things first. He talks about Project Rugby League. Obviously, Derek went over to the States, got a few backers, really passionate about taking the sport in a different direction, but then reined it back a bit. He wanted to be inclusive. He didn't want to go and do it all himself. He wanted, you know, he's got great respect for the game as a whole, trying to bring everybody together. That was the start of it back in the day. And of course, it's gained a bit of traction since then. And of course, we had changes at the Rugby Football League as a consequence of that. Nigel Wood coming in. He was very quick to defend Nigel Wood, and we'll get into that in a few moments' time. But let's get into the details there. So the meeting was convened to discuss from how the competition structure was going to be going forward. And on the table was a 10-team comp, a 12-team comp, and a 14-team comp. So they started at 10 teams. We've already got 12. And again, the whole premise of this was, and I'll bring you in on this stuff, the whole premise of what's happened is that if we don't do anything before the next TV deal, why should Sky or anybody else give us more money? It's the same product. Hence the reason for this discussion and to try and mix things up a little bit and get into a better bargaining position for the 2027 deal. Now, you, me, will completely agree with that. If you stand still and you go and say, well, we want more money for the same products, you're probably going to struggle. So the whole impetus of this is to try and differentiate, get something a little bit different to go to the broadcasters with, to hopefully drive the money. You'd agree with that as a business proposition, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. If you're going with the same old, you're going to get the same results, aren't you? You know, they're not going to think so. You absolutely needed to revitalise the competition and do something differently. And obviously, the loop fixtures, which I know we're going to discuss, is probably the main issue in the sport at the moment in terms of the product on the pitch and what we're producing.
Yeah, John Beasley, great content as always. Cheers, John. And love to have you as a member, mate. And in terms of another thing as well, yes, Ultimate Rugby, my apologies. Project Rugby, Ultimate Rugby, Christopher Walsworth, a Leopards fan. Absolutely. Ultimate Rugby. Great name, that, actually. Ultimate Rugby. It's almost like the Ultimate Warrior back in WWE. There's many warriors, but there's only the Ultimate Warrior. Oh, I'm loving it. Absolutely marvellous. Anyway, so yeah, that was the whole premise behind it. So first and foremost, the 10-team comp was discussed. And this was pretty much threw away because it doesn't address the loop fixtures. In fact, actually, what it does is it gives us another loop. It gives us a third game. Well, everybody's got a third game. We've still got a loop fixture. But everybody would have a third game. And to quote Derek, it remains an unfair competition because if I'm playing a team twice at home and another team's playing them twice away, where's the fair? And what they're trying to do is make a competition that to any outsiders looking at it, yeah, that's a fair and reasonable comment. I think, rugby league over the years, unless you're a purist and you love the game no matter how it's dished up, to somebody who's been introduced to rugby league, the loop fixtures and the way in which it's produced does make you scratch your head, doesn't it? So I think it was right and appropriate that was thrown out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the only fair and equal competition we will ever have is playing each other home and away. That's it. It's a non-negotiable for me.
Absolutely. And what he also said in there as well, which was fantastic, you'd expect nothing less either from Derek, was that they've done analysis. And when they are playing a team twice at home, okay, the second fixture, I think it was 8.6%, certainly 8% and change. There is a reduction in gates by about 8.6%. Now, if you base Leigh on a 8,500 average attendance at £40 a head, when you factor in tickets, beer, cokes, whatever for the kids, that's about 30 grand. So there's a 30 grand reduction in that for probably every team when you have a loop fixture because it just loses that razzmatazz. I've already seen Leigh play Warrington at home this year. I don't really want to go again. So that also factored in terms of why the loop fixtures need to go. So then, of course, once the 10-team comp have been cast aside, well, now it's the 12-team. Do we stay as we are? And again, in terms of negotiating with the broadcasters and also the loop fixtures, again, Stef, that was not deemed fit for purpose. What's the point in having these discussions if all we're going to do is stand still? So that makes perfect sense as well.
Absolutely, and I think what we're saying there in terms of it's one just to quickly talk about in terms of the playing someone twice away. Say for example, Leigh get Hull KR and Hull as loop fixtures. That's 4 over 2 hour journeys the fans have got to make. So most fans are going to pick and choose which game they're going to go to, either 1, 2, or 3 or 4. If you're absolute diehard who goes to every away game. But it's a big commitment to ask for people, and also there's the fatigue of playing the same teams over and over and over again. And this is the biggest problem. If we want to increase attendances, and people, it's been a hot topic in our chat about away attendances, now we incentivise people to go to away games. Well, you don't incentivise them to go by asking them to do it 4 times. That's not how you do it. You make it a special one-off event, unmissable event to go to the Hull FC game as a one-off, and far more people will attend that than going there twice.
Yeah, and we spoke a lot about this off camera because, of course, in the WhatsApp group, our WhatsApp group, there's been a lot of talk about, how we get more away fans at games and this, that, the other. And of course, your sentiment is worry about your own. Shouldn't be relying on away fans to do that. But it's we'll get to Magic Weekend in a moment. But the point here is that why are we devaluing our product? That's the thing. For example, as a Magic Weekend, as a season ticket holder, you can get 50% off for the weekend. Well, that's not incentivizing you to get your money's worth. You'll go, you'll watch your own team, you'll go home because it's a cheap ticket. I don't need to watch the whole weekend. Whereas if you're actually playing full whack and you made it an event, and we'll get into how Derek and the leadership groups of the Rugby Football League, Super League, and the clubs are looking to really freshen it up. It's really exciting stuff that they've been talking about today. or Derek's been talking about today. By making it an event, by making it bigger than just the rugby league, you're going to make sure that people stay in there a little bit more. So we'll get to Magic in a minute. But like I say, in terms of away fans, me and Stef were both saying that, as an away supporter, if I'm going, regardless of what the ticket is. I mean, for example, Leigh this weekend, it's a 30 quid ticket. I'm going anyway. Leigh don't even need to incentivize me by giving me your ticket for 20 quid. And actually, what they're doing there is they're actually going against their own fans who are paying good money to go and watch the home team. So it's about but however, and me and Stef both agree with this. If they wanted to put a family ticket discount on, absolutely. You want to give 10% off for 4 tickets for a family. Nobody would disagree with that. Nobody would disagree with that at all. But why should one ticket get a discount? No, we're going anyway. So I think, we've got to start being proud of our sport and not disrespecting it by a race to the bottom in terms of money. We've got to start saying, no, we have got a quality product that is compatible. Well, for us, it's the greatest sport on earth. And if football and cricket and all these are going to charge a premium, the premium of a rugby league match is always going to be a little bit below, Stef. And you and me have no issue paying £30 a ticket to go and watch our teams play rugby league because it's the greatest game on earth.
Yeah, £30 for an adult ticket is an absolute bargain in terms of. If anybody thinks that watching a game of Super League isn't worth £30, then they may as well go and watch something else because it's 2 hours. If you divide that by two, it's £15. It's minimum wage, so it's worth 2 hours of your time working to go and watch and be entertained for that 2 hours. So I think it's bang on priced perfectly. That we need to get grounds packed because of the product and what's being offered at the stadiums, not by doing reductions. Because as I hate using the example, but Huddersfield, they're a classic example of a club that reduces ticket prices but are seeing no results in terms of increased attendances.
If it's too cheap, it's too cheap. As you know, I used to work in cars, and if it's a race to the bottom with cars, it's quite interesting. I've just been to my dad's, and he's looking at a car, and there's a car that's a year younger than another car that's done 25,000 miles less, and he's priced 500 quid cheaper. I said, Dad, that's not a bargain. Why is it 500 quid cheaper? There's something up with that car, and straight away, the value of that car is X. If you look at all the others around it, they're all priced there about, give or take, 50 quid. That's the value of the car. So why is this one so cheap? And it's the same with what we're talking about. Value your product, get it on the line. Will people pay for a rugby league ticket, especially new people? Would they pay football prices for a rugby league ticket? Probably not. That's why it won't be pitched at that level. But for me, it's, as you say, 30 quid. If I'm working a full week and it's costing me 2 hours of my working week to go and have a de-stress and watch rugby league, great value for money. And no issue with that at all. A couple of people in the chat, bio accounts, you're going to be saying hello to Thomas West in the Platinum Lounge on Friday. Tom is a regular watcher of Super League Raw. Great to have you as a member, Tom. Steph, when you shake him by the hand, make sure that you steer into our QR codes there. But anyway, we move swiftly on. 14-team comp, then, of course, was positioned. And I think, the reason why this one got passed, they had to do something. Again, and there's other things that we're going to talk about in a minute with regards to other ideas that they've got in order to really freshen up rugby league and send it out there to the masses and do something different. But they just felt that a 14-team comp, no loop fixtures, was the right way to go. And he's pretty confident in that. And, for me, I think we'd all agree, providing the financials are right. And again, he addresses how, even though the clubs that are coming up aren't going to get a share of the pot, there's ways in which they could be compensated by the new structures, which, again, I'll touch upon. But they just felt that they needed a 14-team comp to be vibrant, to be different. And I think we'd all agree with that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the only way that we are going to get a fair, competitive Super League. It's as simple as that. It's the easiest solution in terms of structure. We get home and away back, get rid of Magic, which is, again, because it's a loop fixture and distorts the table. And it's a lot simpler for people to understand. I think the main concern with the 14, what people will have, is the quality of the players that are going to be in. But I mean, I would say this year it's been pretty competitive. I think if it weren't for Salford's troubles, they would have been very competitive. Huddersfield, apart from their injuries that we've seen already, they can topple the likes of Hull FC, so they're competitive. So there's very good players in the Championship as well. So I'm not as concerned about that. They will get better, whichever clubs come in. over time, given that they've ran properly, they've got the correct coaching infrastructures, talent identifiers in place. It's not just about the playing stuff, it's the backroom stuff, the marketing people, especially about growing attendances. That's where my concern is, and that's what they need to get right, and everything else will follow.
And we did a segment which I felt was a good little segment last night on Weekly, where we were talking about players that have featured this year that weren't on the radar at the start of the season. And when you look at those players, like, so for example, Warrington don't have their injury crisis this year. Does Jake Fewlis get a game? Jake Fewlis has not let anybody down. He's ready. He's got a lot to offer Super League. Owen Dagnall, a lot to offer Super League. And every club are going to have these, but because, of course, opportunity, there's going to be more opportunities for these players. And we're a salary cap sport. So all of a sudden, and I'm going to use players like Jack Farriman, who has clearly got a block at Wigan, a clear block in the fact that Bevan French and Harry Smith are immovable at this moment in time. Jack Farriman's agent is rubbing his hands at the prospect of 14 teams, because you're not telling me that a team is not going to come along and say to Jack, yeah, you're at Wigan. You can always go back to Wigan in your future, Jack. However, would you like 150 grand to come and play for us this season? I don't know what Jack's on. And all of a sudden now Jack's gone, and Jack might not go. But he's got a decision to make. So again, it's going to put, he's going to put pressure on clubs to how they handle their cap, who they promote, who they let go. And I'm with you. I think there's enough quality. We've seen Declan Murphy, another case in point at Salford, Connell at Salford. These kids aren't getting a game, but they haven't let anybody down. And it's arguable that if you put the likes of a Connell, a Murphy in a Wigan side that are 3 or 4 players down, it's a seamless track. They would be fine, but they're playing at Salford. They're playing in a pool of players at the moment that every week are being patched together, and it's very difficult to get consistency. But you're not telling me that Declan Murphy isn't a top 22 shirt player at most clubs in Super League this year, based on what we've seen thus far? Would you say 22?
Absolutely.
A 22 shirt player? Yeah. So I'm with you. I'm very comfortable on that. Very, very comfortable on that. So 14 teams is where we are, and of course that's where we're going forward. Now, what Derek does go to great pains to cement in the interview is that he believes in the IMG grading. I mean, that's crystal clear. We're too far down the track, and he does believe that what it does is it provides good quality checks and balances in terms of sustainability and making sure that the sport is going in the right direction. And he also suggests that those clubs, and again, we are using last night's feed, so we can actually show you this as we're doing it. He did actually say that the likes of Toulouse, London, York, the ones who feature there in ranks 13, 14 and 15, it would be wrong and it would be foolish for that not to be a factor in the application. At the end of the day, everybody can apply, but if they're very highly ranked in the IMG scoring, they've got to be using that front and centre as a further argument for sustainability and coming up. So it'd be foolish for them not to. So it was very, very clear that IMG has still got a responsibility, and even though they're opening up to 2 that will be independently, and we'll get to this in a minute, will be independently verified before they get promoted, that those who are in good, solid IMG scoring criteria, and Oldham, we spoke about Oldham, there was a lot of talk because Oldham are 4 in the Championship, have had a good year. Oldham should submit. I think it'd be crazy for Oldham to submit. They're nowhere near. Great year this year. They're going in the right direction. They're not Super League. They're not even in the first 2 columns of the IMG rating. It ain't happening. Yeah. But those ones that are 13, 14, 15, 16, surely they're going to use that as a part of their reasoning as to why they should be considered, and rightly so. So I think where we were coming from, and I think where a lot of people are coming from, is that, well, how is this actually going to be done? There's a lot of concern about how these 2 clubs are going to be selected. And Derek goes to great lengths to say that having gone through the process with Toronto, something that you mentioned last night, he actually says that when he submitted that application, he was up against the Bradford Bulls then. And he actually put in the application that he had reservations, that this was just a fait accompli, or what we want to say, Bradford are getting in. And of course, they got in, because they had a better case. And it's the same people that are overseeing this submission as back then. So Derek, again, very, very comfortable that the right 2 teams will be selected, that there will be nothing, there'll be nothing untoward done having gone through the process before. So that, for me, made me feel a little bit better this afternoon, that having experienced it himself, and it's the same panel that's going to, or certainly the same chair of the panel that's going to be looking at this one. He's very, very confident that he would not risk his reputation by doing anything untoward, that this will be a proper and assured process. So people should take that for me as verbatim, and we shouldn't worry too much about it, Steph. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, the encouraging thing for me there is that they will be still using the IMG points as part of that criteria.
Yeah,
I know the process what Leigh had to go through when they did replace Toronto was unbelievably thorough. They produced a 450-page brochure on why Leigh Leopards should be in Super League, and I believe he references that. We'll share it with other clubs if they want it,
correct.
kind of
Yes.
thing. Um, but I think the good thing for me and the reassuring thing is whatever these clubs produce, they won't be able to lie on. So, like we've had instances before with franchising, you've had Castleford saying we're building new stadiums, never comes to fruition. Whereas these clubs, because of the documents and stuff, the evidence they have to submit for the IMG gradings now, they won't be able to lie on that document. It'll be this is where we are financially, this is where we're at, this is where we're at. And I think what a lot of people our understanding in terms of this process with the two clubs is there could be factors outside of IMG. For example, Bradford Bulls may say we will put £20 million into an RFL account, and you can pay us back £2 million a season to prove that we have got the finances to do it. Not saying that's the case, but it gives the club an opportunity to do something like that. Toulouse may want to do something like that. Toulouse may say, which is not part of IMG, by the way, but they may say we will forgo any central funding for the next 10 years to be in Super League. We'll pay for it ourselves. We've got a really rich backer. We're not bothered. Don't give
Yeah.
us any money. Spread that between yourselves. We just want to be in the competition. So that's what people are understanding in terms of this process, that it's an opportunity for clubs to put in other factors that may not be included within the IMG process. And I think that's what I took from what Derek was saying, because I wasn't fully up to speed with what the process was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, he also referenced, the screen that's gone in at Bradford, the Paul Vaughan signing at York, etc., and the digital billboards, and he just said, why wouldn't you? It's a quick way of getting the odd point here and the odd point there under the criteria. If you can afford to do it, why wouldn't you do it? It doesn't necessarily mean that Bradford are coming up. It doesn't necessarily mean that York are coming up. It will go through a thorough process. He was very clear to outline that as part of his discussion with his media team, which was really good. And like I say, my concern last night for Toulouse wasn't necessarily the financial element. It's just the fact that this narrative around Toulouse. I think the adage I used yesterday is that if a distant friend has got a wedding and you're not invited, have you got the whats to go to the hotel, knock on the door with a bottle of wine and say, "Can I come in, please?" That was mine, and because of the narratives that are going around over the French game, that's a decision for Toulouse to make. Do they want to fight what appears to be a system that's against them? And again, that might be wrong of me to say, but that's the impression that is being generated, maybe by the press more than it is from within the camp. I don't know, but that's the impression we're hearing. But that'll be something that we see in the weeks ahead. Another thing that he said, which I found was very, very interesting, he said that if he said he's pretty assured, and of course he's assured that Leigh are going to be grade A. He's got nothing to worry about. But he did say that if he was a grade B club, that they would be, and they were on the cusp, Huddersfield, Salford, case in point, that he would be putting two horses in the race. He would be submitting a bid as a fallback, which I thought was very interesting. He actually says that, So he said, if I wasn't so sure, if those, and again, guys, why is Derek saying this? Look, he's not saying anything out of turn. Look how close it is. Huddersfield 14.48 last year. They're going to their ranking's going to reduce. Salford 13.97. Theirs is going to reduce. Then you've got Toulouse at 13.58. That's how close it is. London at 12.65. York at 12.42. We already know that York are going to have a tickle with the 1895. That's already going in there. There's also a tickle perhaps coming for York, should they stay top of the table and actually win the championship. So again, that's going to bring them closer. We already know that Bradford have put the LEDs in, etc. That's probably worth a 1.5. So all of that, everything that Derek's saying there is it's not out of turn. It's fact. It's really, really close. And what Derek was saying, and I thought he was absolutely spot on, that if Leigh was Salford, if Leigh were Huddersfield, he'd be back at putting two horses in the race. He wouldn't just leave it to chance around the IMG that is yet to be submitted for 2026. He would be actually already be working on an application to put in should they miss out on the IMG grade. And I thought that was really interesting.
This is another thing that people aren't getting because they don't understand the IMG process or whatever it is. What they've said is the top 12 teams in IMG will be in Super League next season.
Yeah.
So Bradford putting a board in now, Bradford could very easily with if their finance, they've done something with the finances or whatever, could very easy become the 12th club or the 11th place club. So he's right in what he's saying. People are assuming that Bradford are going to get in in the back door. They might not need to get in by the back door. We're
Mm.
still under IMG rules. It's exactly the same as we started at the beginning of the season. So, so yeah, and York, they may think that I mean, they're going to get 0.35 if they win the championship grand final. They've already got the 0.1 or whatever it is for the AB Sundex. So yeah, it's very interesting, and Derek wouldn't normally say something like that unless he thought clubs were improving and there was a risk to some of those clubs. So it may, I mean, I'm sure they're fully aware of that anyway. That would have been discussed in the meetings, but yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, I just found that a really interesting comment, and it makes perfect business sense. Let's be absolutely clear on that, and it is. So that's basically where they're at. Like I say, there's a journalist that won't be mentioned that's done this 500k Sky One answers nonsense. For me, the press conference thing takes care of that. And I think that, the other thing I would say to the clubs, I don't think you're going to be able to fight the current status quo. The only way to fight the current status quo of leaks is to get ahead of it and maybe align yourself with people who want it done in the right way.
In
Just
terms of the
saying.
leaks, yeah, in terms of leaks, Dave, I mean, press releases are embargoed to go out on a certain time. And if they break embargoes, then they will have their press pass removed from them. And it's the same with
But
with
this won't
leaks
be
as well.
embargoed because it's not
Yeah,
been, even now, other than Derek's interview, there has
yeah,
been no official meet, no official press, other than the statement. There has not been that press conference. There's not been. There's our statement. There's been nothing about here's the full details. It's embargoed. It's basically, and I'd have got that. So I'm pretty confident there's been no embargo or nothing leaked in that respect. So something's
yeah.
been leaked, and Derek was filthy over it. And like I say, for me as a sport, and I've said this all, I like to wait for official transfer news to come out and all that. I don't like speculation. I don't like rumor. I think the fans deserve to hear the facts verbatim from the people who make the decisions in the clubs and in the governing body, and it not to be leaked. The only way around that is you all press conferences straight away. You don't leave it to rumour mill, and maybe you align yourself with people who want to do it in the right and proper way, and actually reward people who are doing it in the right and proper way. That's the key. Get ahead of it. That's what I'd say. That's my biggest plea to all of them. Get ahead of it. If you want a more vibrant rugby league in terms of the products on the pitch, what you do around the game, etc., why not have a better approach elsewhere as well? That'd be my take on it. And look, I always say, I'm only saying what's in my heart. Call it disruptive in the press circle. It is what it is. I'm a fan first and foremost. I believe there's a right and a wrong way of doing things, and we will
Yeah.
continue to try and do things what we consider to be the right way. Other people might say this is the wrong way, that I shouldn't be saying what I'm saying. But hey, it's all about opinions. It really is. And I appreciate people have got to make a living as well. Right, let's go into some other things that he said. Magic's gone. I mean, that came out of it. Magic weekend in its current format is gone. And the premise for that is very much around the fact that it's a loop fixture. And that's it. It's gone. That came out of it. Now, I know that you appreciated Magic in terms of certainly what we've been doing as a community. There is good news coming, by the way, for those who haven't watched the interview. There is a bit of good news around this coming. But Magic in its present guise is gone. And we'll deal with the positive in a minute, which addresses is the life in it or not, because I think there is life in it based on what Derek said today, but not in its presence, guys. You would agree, though, Magic in its current format needed to go for the competitive nature of the comp.
Well, first in terms with Magic, I loved going to Magic. It's
Yeah,
brilliant. It's
yeah,
fantastic. But it's like a salesman coming trying to sell me beer. I'm going to buy it. I'm converted. You don't need to sell rugby league to me. But the problem is, it's with Magic is the way it looks on TV. And the whole big picture with Super League, Rugby League at the moment, the only way the sport is going to grow is by getting bigger TV deals. So we've got to make ourselves attractive to the TV companies. It's no coincidence IMG wanted to scrap it because they can see from an external company the aesthetics and the way it looks is poor,
yeah.
even though the event actually is quite well attended. over the 2 days. It would over 2 days. It's a full stadium basically, the attendance, but it just looks poor on TV because people just come and watch their own games. Majority of the people. So in that respect, that's where the Magic has failed for me because they've not been able to keep those people in the stadium for the full day, the majority. So that's where the concept's failed, and I'm as much as I'd miss going to Magic, I'd rather see the game grow, and I'd rather see the team get the clubs get better TV deals.
Yeah, people are asking in the chat, where can you see it? If you go to the Leigh Leopards website after this show, you can watch it verbatim. Like I say, we're not going to cover everything Derek says, but I'll tell you now, if it was a 3-hour interview, I could listen to the man all day. He's so passionate about the game, and he's so progressive about the game. When Derek speaks, we should listen because his heart's in the right place and he wants this game to be on the platform that he deserves to be on. And I'm not a Leigh Leopards fan, but I admire a man who puts his money where his mouth is and drives the way that he does. Love him or hate him, the man is good for rugby league, no doubt about that. I personally love him. I think he's a great asset to the game. What he does talk about is, why can't Magic be reimagined? Again, something that you said last night on Raw without knowing what Derek was going to say today. Why can't Magic be Challenge Cup last 16 weekend? Where, then we've got championship clubs involved in it as well. But he does go on and say that, again, there's too much that goes on outside the grounds. Again, the aesthetics, as you say, in the ground. So how do we, he said, how do we keep people in the ground? He said, we need to look at that. He said, but we're not saying that Magic's gone as a concept, so many games in one venue over 2 days, but maybe it becomes a way of maybe giving a bit more life back to the Challenge Cup because it's something that the Challenge Cup hasn't got. I've got no. I love me rugby league. I think what we had last year as a community, and those who've just discovered Super League Raw because we're doing this, go and have a look at our YouTube channel. Go and have a look at the content that we put out. Consider becoming a member. Because last year we took over 40 people to Magic Weekend. We had a great 2 days where we stayed in the stadium for both days. We had banter, we had laugh because all the teams were represented. So when other fans teams were playing, we were backing one or the other, we were having a bit of a joke. It was a real great quality event that we made even better for our members. So I love Magic. I mean, don't get me wrong, if it wasn't going with the community, would it be as good? No. I mean, the last two grand finals, before that it was just me, you and Reggie, but the last two grand finals where we took a community, we're taking over 40 again this year. They've been fantastic, haven't they? Because we're a community and we enjoy it together. And I think that's why I want to hold on to Magic, because it's one of those rare occasions where we can all get together and have a really, really good weekend. So the Challenge Cup, I think that's probably got a bit of mileage in it, albeit it will need to. It's how you keep bums on seats in the stadium, isn't it?
The Challenge Cup is another one that needs revitalising, and for me, this is a perfect opportunity to make it a competition for the 12 Super League, well, the 14 Super League sides we've got now, and that's how you do it. And what you do then is, I would invite the top two from the previous year in the championship to make it a round of 16, so they get an incentive in that competition to win or come second in that group. You get entered into the Challenge Cup the following year, and the game, the competition starts from just 16 teams, and we could have that in a Magic style format: 3 games on one day, four games on the other. That would be a brilliant way to kick off the Challenge Cup, because one of the fears with Magic and the Challenge Cup was people saying, "Oh, you don't know you're playing." They couldn't plan. Well, you could plan. You could say the Challenge Cup is on the 28th of May. All 14 Super League clubs and the 2 Championship clubs will know in the October before that they will be in Newcastle in May for the Challenge Cup. Who you're playing will do the draw near a time. A week before, how good would that be to have a big press conference, big draw live as a build up to the Challenge Cup start, the Challenge Cup, and we're doing it there, and you don't know you're going to play to it. I'm excited speaking about that for the Challenge Cup. So I think that would be a great concept.
I think it's something I want to talk to Derek about as well. I've got ideas in terms of drafts and all sorts that I think again could give razzmatazz to the sport. It really, really could. Bob A in the chat, has Derek ever watched college American football? Derek is all over American sports. That's where a lot of these ideas have come from. He can see, how it needs to be promoted for it to be elevated to where it needs to be. There's no doubt about that. Now, one of the things that, of course, again was discussed by Dave was an 8-team playoff because a 14-team comp allows you to do that, and what that would do is generate additional income that goes into a central pot. So once you get to playoff rugby league, that money's taken by the RFL and divvied out. And he said, it's not my decision, but he almost suggests that a bit of that money could be tickled to the two that come up. So even though the central distribution is not going to the two that come up, by expanding to an 8-team, an 8-team playoff system, it would generate, and there's other ideas as well that he's got around that, but that could generate additional income, which again could go to those to just take that burden off a little bit and give a little bit of a tickle back, which again was quite interesting to hear him say. Now, the other thing that comes out of the discussion, which, and this is where he lights up, and, I know you last night were saying that, the nines comp doesn't float your boat. Well, let me tell you, Stef, the nines comp that Derek talks about today would float your boat. So what Derek was talking about, and he's absolutely right, he actually points to your win at the opening game of the season, 1-0 over Wigan. He said, and whilst I'm a purist and I love that, he recognises that certainly the youth of today, they can't think of anything worse because they want action. And he points to the Premier League darts, to the 20 in cricket. I'd rather go and watch paint dry. But anyway, that's by the by. But these concepts work because it appeals to a new demographic. And he said a nines comp with its vibrancy and this, that, the other could really captivate a younger audience to the point where they then go, well, what's the 13-man game all about? And what he talks about is a festival of rugby league that could go on the road. He actually said, and again, he starts off talking about Dublin and then he gets a brainwave where he says, what about the Billy Boston Invitational? Nines comp, playing off the back of Sir Billy's knighthood. And he said, why not have it in Cardiff, the first one? And you can tell he's speaking on the fly at this point. Have it at Cardiff, get a bit of, we've seen how much publicity Billy's knighthood's got. We're going to go to Cardiff. That's where we're going to kick this off. And he talks about a festival atmosphere. We know nines is a shorter period, that it's bang, bang, bang. The women's game does that, and it's a really well run event. But what he's talking about, big stadia, and in between the games, you've got a music act on, does a couple of songs, then the next game comes on, fireworks, pyrotechnics. And what he also talks about, which I think is a phenomenal idea, is you then have two headline acts. Simon Moran comes to mind here straight away, pulling skill sets together. And on the end of the Saturday game, you have a headline act. At the end of the Sunday fixtures, you have a headline act. So now it becomes a concert with a big headline act at the end of each game. And, the clubs you could have a pool, like a bowl system where everybody can just mingle, or you could actually, if you wanted to as a club, have your own club sections if the clubs wanted to just be with their own supporters. And he talks about it as a spectacle of rugby league. One, it would show the fast nature, pace, skill set of the players, a little bit of razzmatazz in the middle where people don't need to go anywhere else, and then a big concert at the end. And what he also talks about is get ahead of the curve. The clubs book the hotels before it's announced. The clubs go and book the hotels. So you have to book through the clubs. Yeah, the clubs are going to get a tickle. Happy days. That goes back into the spectacle of rugby league. So now, it gets announced. So whereas there's no leaks, it's like, yeah, it's in Cardiff, it's on this day, contact your local club for booking details. And they do like they did with Vegas, where book through the club. Yeah, there might be an extra tenner on your hotel room, 20 quid on your hotel room, whatever it may be. But you book through the club. You're guaranteed to be in a hotel with your own supporters. You put the transfers on and this, that, and the other. The way he describes it, as an event, as a rugby league event, you think, whoa, that's suddenly quite a tasty proposition. That's got a bit of life in it to bring a new audience to it. So that really excited me because we've seen it work in darts. We've seen it work in the 20. We've seen other sports do this shorter format to get the interest. And I think rugby nines would lend itself well to that. Your thoughts on that, Stef?
Yeah, he's not doing anything there that's not reinventing the wheel either. You look at as soon as you were talking, then I'm thinking Haydock Park Racecourse. The people go and watch the racing all day, then they watch Kylie Minogue at night, keeps everybody in there. Beer sales, all the rest of it. So yeah, no, it's the thing is, unless we try things, what I find in rugby league, especially in the journalism part of it as well, is a lot of ideas get written off before they've even started. And, it's rubbish. They don't know what they're talking about. Leigh Leopards, if it was put to a vote with Leigh Leopards fans, we would still be called Leigh Centurions and we'd be probably back in the championship now. It's as simple as that. So sometimes you've just got to trust the process. You've got to chill out a bit, relax and see what happens. It's not going to be the death of rugby league. Rugby league will carry on no matter what. If it has to reformat again, it has to reformat. Yes, it's frustrating that we've had to change things over and over again, but it took Leigh 5 attempts or 4 attempts to go into Super League and not come straight back down again. and to have a vision to change something. Something wasn't working with the current model, for us to do that, for Leigh to achieve it. And this is the difference for me, where you've got to let them try. These are clever men; they know what they're doing. In terms of business acumen and stuff, and don't forget, they want it to be successful too. They're not going in voting for the competition to be worse. Far
No.
from it. They don't want to be putting millions in themselves. They want it to be self-sufficient for every club. And that's the reason they're doing it. It's not from a self-interest point of view. It's a passion for the game. Hence, Derek coming out today with his statement. Who, probably the most passionate owner there is in Super League at the moment.
Yeah, exactly that, and he goes at pains reference the Nigel Wood element of that. He said, and it's true. He said, we put Nigel in. Do you honestly believe we put Nigel Wood in, unless we felt he could genuinely make a difference? At the end of the day, he said, you just got to trust us in that. That he actually says that Nigel's probably one of the most intelligent man in rugby league he's ever met. That they were his words in his interview. He's actually quite humble as well in terms of where he sits in terms of the rich list in rugby league. But it's really, really interesting. Really interesting. It's a cracking interview. Like I say, an hour and a half. It flew by, absolutely flew by. And like I say, when you watch Derek, you can't help but just get consumed by him. I mean, he is, for me, at board level, ownership level, he's a fan of rugby league. That's what shines through with Derek. He's a fan of rugby league, and like I say, having seen that, I go back to where I started this special today with you, Stef. Is the fact that, look, Rugby Football League, Derek, if you're watching this, because I know there's a chance he could, because obviously we were marketing it as an interview Unpacked, and I know that certainly his media team will be aware of this. But my advice, for what it's worth, start holding press conferences straight. That way, leaks can't happen. Leaks can't happen. And he weren't, you're straight out the room. You tell the press, be there at 3. We expect to be out at 3. Might be a little bit later. We'll come out. We'll give you the headlines of what the outcomes of the meeting was, and we'll take a Q&A. Done, dusted, verbatim. But you're still going to get, like we've had today, somebody go online and pick out one little thing that isn't said negatively. Derek seems very, very confident that Sky will come to the party on it. He didn't seem flustered at all. He was using it as just a way of explaining how it might look and how it might be broadcast.
Sky want more content. Just to put that absolutely clear, I know for a fact Sky want more content. They're trying to buy up as many sports as they can at the moment. They need to have games, so they will be probably happy. All the production costs are already there for them. It will cost them a bit extra for the wages of the producers or whatever. They've got all the equipment and stuff. It's just the travel to get to the game.
Exactly. And look, my biggest criticism of Sky. My biggest criticism of Sky is this nonsense that if you've got a game fully produced on the red button, and all you're doing is showing highlights of last night's game, what are you doing?
Yeah.
How can that not be the main channel? It's bonkers. I just don't get that. I never will get that. It's like the BBC on the red button putting The War Was Won from 1952 on BBC Two when there's live Leigh Leopards or whatever it was that day. You think one of the greatest games of the season, bar none. Great advertisement for the sport. One, they hide it on the red button and they put a nonsense program on in its stead, and you're just like, what is going on? And again, this is why I think what we've seen has happened, because Derek and the owners are probably as aghast as we are at some of these decisions around how our sport is promoted. And but if we are seen as the poor relations, and if we don't fight back, not in the wrong way, but in the right way, to say, hang on a minute, look at what we're doing. Look at how vibrant we are. Look, you've got to come at it the right way. You've got to go to that table with someone that wants. It's like you say about Leigh, the fear of missing out. The fear of missing out. Leigh. There's only one reason that Leigh Leopards, OKR, case in point this season, that he's standing room only. It's because of the great job that's been done to promote the club in the local community, and it's the fear of missing out. People want to be in that stadium, and we've got to do that on a grander scale with the people that produce the sport and put it on the TV for us. And that's what we need to do. And everything that Derek said today is a journey towards that goal.
Yeah. And just to quote that press story as well, has it been confirmed that Sky are even being given the 7th game?
Mate, it's a nonsense. Exactly.
Right. Could we not give it to the BBC for free if Sky had a problem with it? We do that anyway, don't we?
Again, it's a nonsense. Like I say, literally before we came on air, it popped up on my feed, and I'm just like, having watched the interview, it's everything that is wrong with, and even Derek said it, bad news sells. Well, and for me, reward people who do it the right way. Reward people who do it, and that if that's the existing status quo of journalists who change their ways, then fine. But if you want a cleaner product, if you want things done the right way, if you don't want the leaks, if you don't want the clickbait, if you don't want the false representation of this great sport of rugby league, then you've got to start rewarding the right behaviours.
Well, the game, the way they promote it is promoted via our journalist is like putting a piano on your back and trying to do a 100-meter sprint.
Correct.
Because they're the piano. They should be. There's so many positive stories, especially this season. How good's this season been? I'm confident crowd attendances will be up. Definitely.
Yeah.
We've had so many brilliant matches. The league, apart from the Salford situation, has been brilliant. There's so much to be positive about. And then what we get is just negative, negative, negative. And this is the problem. The way the game is reported on is the piano on Super League's back.
Completely agree with you, mate. And like I say, me today, and like I said, we're big enough to say, do you know what? We've not fallen into many traps in 4 years. I think we fell into one last night. There's a lot of what I said that I stand by, but it's great today that we've had somebody come out, Derek, who was in the room, who was given a really good, open and honest interview. And like I said, had that been a press conference at 3:00 after that meeting had finished, then all of us come away knowing the facts. And when you go and watch it, which is probably your next point to call, it's on the Leopards website. When you watch it, hopefully, like me, you come away going, yeah, in Derek, in Nigel, in the powers that be we trust, because it comes through the screen that this has to happen. And purists, look, I'm a purist. I'm half purist, but I'm also open to new things. You're the same. You don't stand in the way of progress. I love a. How many times we said a great defensive game has been a great defensive game, but then equally the Leeds league game this year, where it was just a tri-fest, was just on a different level again, because and sometimes a bit of both is what's required. And unfortunately, I think the diehard purists are now of a certain age, and if rugby league is going to be vibrant going forward, good companies listen to their customers. In order to get new customers, you need to be down with the kids. That's what you need to be down with. So for me, that nines comp, you're sitting there going, nines, really? You can't sell magic. The way he sells it and the thought pro, and he's on about like I say, I won't spoil it all for people. But when you watch that part of the interview, you're just going to sit there and go, wow, that sounds well worth going to. I'd be all over that. Like
they need to employ Wakefield's media team, because they put everybody else to shame as well.
And again, going back to your point on IMG, I think across the board there's been improvements in pretty much all the teams, most of the teams, but there's certain ones that have broke the mold. For example, Leigh have broke the mold in terms of match day experience. Wakefield online do an incredible job, and I think what we want to see again is
Leeds do a great job. Leeds Rhinos do a really good job with for me, it's about what I love, and this is how I'm a rugby league nutter anyway, but I'll watch anything to do with rugby league. But the behind the scenes stuff, what Wakefield and Leeds are producing, this should be on Netflix. It's that good and it's that well produced. I'm sure they will be getting sound bited on Wakefield social media now because I'm bigging them up that much.
Well, it's happened before.
It has happened before, yeah. This is the generation we're in. We're in a generation of Netflix, Amazon Prime documentaries behind fly on the wall scene in sport, and especially ones that are passionate. Have got so big hits, and there's so many things to celebrate our game with, and that's where we need to get away from the old fashioned journalism and let clubs like Wakefield really get that out, and they should be rewarded for me with it. They should be talking to Netflix and Amazon Prime, and Wakefield, it should be a club each year gets selected for a behind the scenes, and Wakefield should be the first as a reward for how well they're doing theirs.
Right, to bring this discussion to a close, let's just get a few comments up. Carla there, the younger generation is the one that we need to entice. And I know, Carla, you're doing a great job of that with your little ones, as is Stef, as am I, as we all are. We love this great game. Keep doing the great work that you do. Greg Roach, Greg, it's the fear of missing out on an event which is more than 80 minutes of rugby, hence Super League Raw membership, hence the grand final with Super League Raw. You know, how many people this year have decided to come, not necessarily because their team may or may not be there, but it's the fear of missing out. This community, when they go to these games, it's an event. We make it an event. It's a great celebration of rugby league. You know, rugby league will do it on a far greater scale than we ever could. But the bottom line is, yes, he's right. If you produce something that is enticing, people come. We're the embodiment of that. We're increasing how many people we're taking to these events every year because it's so good and it's outstanding. So yeah, great point, well made there, Mr. Roach. I mean, look, in the main, I think, you know, most people really pleased that we decided to do another special as we do, Mr. Sale. But yeah, there you go. Look, go and watch it. Go and watch it. They are the headlines. I just felt it was right and appropriate, especially off the back of Weekly. Now we've got the absolute verbatim. I, for one, really was impressed with the way Derek spoke today. I thought it was an outstanding interview. It gives a lot of clarity. I just hope that some of the key points, the media side of it especially, we can clean that up and we can get it right. Because, like I say, I think had this interview have gone out, or a press conference have gone out with the facts, I think a lot of the downcast, a lot of the clickbait, a lot of the disparaging comments that we've seen, some maybe that we've mentioned as well, like I say, I think we got caught out a little bit, they just go. And what I'm left with now is a real excitement about what the future may hold. So, you know, on behalf of Super League Raw, well done to Derek. Great that you've done that. Really, really appreciate it. Go and watch it. Go to leopards.com. It's there for you to watch. It's an hour and 30 minutes long. It's a fantastic watch. And of course, me and Stef will be back tomorrow for the captain's run. We've got 3 games to talk about tomorrow. But on behalf of myself, Stef, thanks very much yet again, mate. At a moment's notice of coming on and giving us your time. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy what is left of your Wednesday, and we will see you tomorrow for the captain's run. Bye for now.